Hi everyone, this is Mindy Egan for Hero Arts, and in today's video, we are going to be working with the XOXO cover plate. We'll also be doing some light heat embossing for an embossed resist technique. I'm starting with a piece of white cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and here's a look at that XOXO cover plate. I'm lining it up, trying to even out my margins on each side on that white cardstock. I'll hold it in place with low tack tape and run that through the die cut machine. For behind my cover plate, I'm going to be using the stamp set All My Heart Peekaboo, which has all of these really cute hearts on the background. I'm putting that in my Misty tool and I'll pick that up with the door of the Misty. Now I haven't used this stamp set, so I want to make sure that it is prepped, and I just do that by running my hand over the entire stamp set. That's just going to remove any residue that may be on there from the manufacturing and give me a clean impression. Then I'm taking another piece of white cardstock. I put a little bit of removable adhesive on it, placed that over my background with the adhesive side up, and then I'm going to close the door of my Misty backwards here. I can flip that over, and now my cardstock is stuck to the bottom of my Misty, and it's in the perfect placement that I want. Since I'm doing some heat embossing, I'm going to prep the cardstock with an anti-static powder tool, and then I'm going to ink up this entire background using the Hero Arts Embossing and Watermark ink. I'm going to close the door of my Misty to stamp this down onto my white cardstock, and I'm using a stamping tool to just help me glide across the door of my Misty to apply even pressure. If you're not sure if you have a good impression, you can always stamp this again. Then I'm sprinkling on white satin pearl embossing powder. I'm going to tap off any of the excess, and then off on the side I have my heat tool warming up. Now I do like to kind of start from the back a little bit, just real quick. I'll run it over and then flip that over and melt my embossing powder. After I let that cool for about 15 to 20 seconds, I take a Swiffer cloth and just brush over that background. And then I'm going to flip it over, and I just have kind of this adhesive eraser, and I'm going to remove any of that removable adhesive that was on the back. I'll start by doing some ink blending, first with Taffy ink. All of the colors I'll be using for my background are the Reactive inks, and I have a blender brush specifically for my Reactive inks. Now I am just applying a real light layer of this Taffy color to my background, and then I'm going to come in with Berry Smoothie. My original plan was just to use 2 colors, but I am going to intensify that purple just a little bit. So I'm starting off of the cardstock on my glass surface, just kind of gliding onto the background, and then bringing it into that Taffy ink and helping blend those lines together. Since I wanted to intensify that purple a little bit, I'm going to bring in Thistle and start right over that Berry Smoothie. So I'll actually have kind of 3 colors here in transition. It doesn't have to be a perfect blend because we're going to be putting the cover plate over the top. So since this purple was really nice and bright and I liked the intensity of that, I'm going to come back in with that Taffy ink towards the bottom and add just a little bit more color. The more color you add, the more pressure you add, the more color you're going to get on your background. Then I'm just taking a cloth and buffing over that entire background to really make that embossing powder stand out on my background. I decided I wanted to cut out my front panel, so I took an infinity rectangle that's just slightly larger than the XOs, and I'm going to run that through the die cut machine, and I'm using that same size rectangle to die cut out my background so it'll line up perfectly. To add dimension to my card, I am layering up white cardstock. I have 3 pieces here that I'm layering together. You could also use foam tape, but I really like using kind of my scratch cardstock here. And this is going to go right behind the die cut panel. So after I add the background, I'm going to apply tape runner to the back of my XO die cut panel, and I'm going to add that on top. Now, a couple things you could do. You could add foam squares behind this if you want to add dimension to that, or you could turn this into a shaker card. There are lots of possibilities with this, but I'm keeping it just really simple. To attach this to a card front, I have a side folding card base here that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I rolled up some low tack tape and placed that on the inside so it holds my card shut. Then I placed that in the corner of my Misty tool. I have a piece of a pitch black cardstock that's cut just slightly larger than my die cut panel, and I'm adding that to the front of my card. I like using the Misty to do this because it helps me make sure that I have even margins, my card's not sliding around all over the place, and it just really helps me align everything perfectly. Since there wasn't a lot of leftover room on the front of my card, I knew that I needed to do my sentiment separately. So I am using this sentiment from the Signpost Stampin' Cut XL set. I have pitch black cardstock here that I prepped with my anti-static powder tool, and I'm inking up my sentiment with the white pigment ink, and then I'm going to sprinkle on white embossing powder. I love doing this technique for my white embossing because it just really helps give me amazing results. So after I stamp this twice to make sure I have a really good impression, I'm going to sprinkle on that white embossing powder, tap off any of the excess, and make sure I don't have any flicks of the white embossing powder stuck to my cardstock, and then I'm going to melt that with my heat tool. Now, keeping with the kind of love theme that I have on here, I am using an infinity heart die to die cut out my sentiment. I just found one that matched up really well with the sentiment there and didn't leave too much extra room. And then I lined the back of that with black foam squares and popped that up on the front of my card. By doing my sentiment on the black cardstock, it pulls in that little bit of black border that I have and also just really helps make this sentiment stand out from that background. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you again soon.